February 16th, 2014. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday. And in this episode, I'm going to continue my look at my fantasy on Greensleeves for the Lever Harp, the Lever Harp edition. So that was where we left off last time. That was the bridge that gets us from Variation 3 into Variation 4, and then the bridge again at the end of Variation 4 that gets us into the coda. So next week we'll finish it off by talking about the little tremolo section and the coda. But for this week, we're going to talk about that first bridge and about Variation 4. So first of all, you'll notice a lot of lever changes going on here. Pretty intense. In particular, that transition getting right out of the bridge in the first 4 bars of Variation 4 have a lot of stuff going on. But just as in last episode, it's just a matter of practice and of getting them memorized, right? That section's memorized so we know where we're going. And there is actually plenty of time to get there. It's just we have to be efficient about it. And we have to know where we're going, right? We have to have that memorized, so or close to memorized. But what I'm going to focus on instead is on this bridge. I'm going to talk about 2 things. First, I'm going to talk about seeing patterns, and then I'm going to talk about just what we want to do with it, how we want to shape it, how we want to express it. So when we look here, we see that there's this little pattern going on of a left hand playing a single note, and then the right hand playing 5 notes, right? And always going, except for the very, very beginning, right, where we have 4, 3, 2, 1, 2. It's always 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, going up and then down, right, with 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Great. So there's some nice little patterns already. We've noticed something that we can use to memorize this, or just to make it easier to play through it, because this is a spot where I think we want to be pretty free. We want to be pretty confident, so we can just play it exactly the way we want to without worrying about what we're doing. So then looking at, now let's see, we start with these levers up, and we finish this off, right? We finished off the Variation 3. So now here we start, right? We've got this little pattern. Left hand moves down. And you can see this, I'll get sharp at that point, see these little, just looking at little patterns. This next, bar 72, right? We're doing the same thing, just a third lower. The first one, right? We've got this shape in the right hand where we have a gap between 3 and 2, 1 string between 3 and 2. And other than that, right, we're going 3, 2, 1, kind of like a scale, but with that gap. And there's also a gap between the left hand, right? We got 1 string between 2 in the left hand and 3 in the right hand. And we do that again, starting on this E, right? We move down a third from the G. Of course, we also have this lever change, so we might practice, right? And maybe the start, maybe that D sharp that starts the next bar. That would be a good little spot just to... And now, this next bar, the right hand keeps this same shape. So it doesn't move from... Right? It gets to just stay there, stay put, and just play those same notes up and down. It's the left hand that's moving, so it goes down to the D sharp and back to the E. So if we go back to 72, we see so after the start of 72, we've got then 3 beats where it's just the left hand moving and the right hand staying where it is. Cool. Next bar. What do we got going on this next bar? Well, now we'll notice the right hand pattern changes to be an actual little tiny scale up and down, right? This is bar 73 and 74, I'm sorry. And the left hand is down here. And then they just move down 1 string, both of them. So if we go back, let's see, we started up here. same little shape that we had in 72, right? That gap between 2 and 3. And now the left hand, we'll see from this point on, so this is bar 75, the last bar on page 3. And bar 75 and 76, the left hand is just playing G's. So these 4 bars are a kind of a repeat section. So great, left hand's just stuck on G, except it has to go up here and change that D lever the first time. And the right hand has this little pattern, and then it moves down to play the D. So we stay on this G and the A, move down to the D. Maybe it feels more comfortable to play with 4, but I think just because we're going back and forth from this pattern, it's nice to keep 3 on the bottom if that's at all feasible. Then we start to repeat that. There's a misprint if you have the first edition. The start of bar 76, the right hand should be E, G, A, G, E. There is a D there, and it should not be. It should be an E. So it should be a mirror of the bar before, again. And it looks like we're going to mirror it again. Got to change this. But then there is an E, not the D that we're expecting, right? Because we've done this. We're expecting it to go back to the D, but because that E is the pickup, is actually part of the tune of Greensleeves. So again, this is almost just repeat, except go back to the E, and if anything, we can have a little bit of a gap between that G and then the E that leads us into variation 4. Anyway, just some looking at some of the patterns. And so this whole bridge section, I think, needs to feel, I wrote freely in there, it needs to feel very fluid and very easy. It's just kind of rolling off that sense of, so we're not tied down to a very strict rhythm. It's kind of like waves, right? So it might start slowly and gather some momentum. And anyway, play around with it, right? It's something that is, through a lot of this, we're playing the tune or some variation of it. But here we have a lot of freedom to just kind of stretch things or push things as we wish. So a great spot to have fun. And again, if we memorize it, the more secure it is, the more we're able to freely kind of express what we're feeling when we play it without worrying about the mechanics of where we're going. Then we get to variation 4. So this is the happy variation. We move into a major key for a lot of these instead of we're playing G major there instead of E minor. And quite up-tempo, I think. And with these, with the 16ths, they could be quite short. Ba-ba-bum, 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 bum. Right, this kind of brisk, up-tempo version of Greensleeves. So again, there's all these lever changes that require some practice, but not too bad, I think, once you get it under your hand. And then just talk briefly about this ending spot. So again, I had to make up something because I originally wrote this for pedal harp, had this big wild variation where we're doing a bunch of hand over hand arpeggios and too many no chance to do the lever changes required in that. So instead, we're trying to shift moods, right? We're trying to shift from this up-tempo variation 4, which we can repeat if we want a slightly longer piece, into the very sort of wistful, sad coda. And so in order to do that, we've come, let's see. So these, or maybe they're flat. These are still kind of up-tempo, but they are minor, right? We're starting to notice maybe it's not quite as happy as it used to be. And now we can can start to bring the tempo down a little bit, relax a little bit, maybe break the chords a little bit more, and kind of start to, okay, calm down a little bit and shift the mood, right? We're shifting the mood. We've got these few bars to do that. Let me start this tremolo section that leads us eventually into the coda. And one final note in terms of speaking about breaking chords. So there's often the question, like, should I break a chord? And if I should, how much, right? And sometimes you'll run across a piece where the composer has broken chord indications, right? A little wavy line in front of some pieces, some chords, and not in others. I'm working on a couple of movements from the Britain Suite for Harp right at the moment. And, he's very specific. He wants certain chords broken, and if they're not marked broken, that means don't play them broken, right? Play them flat. But a lot of the time, there might not be any broken chords marked at all, right? And yet, we might break the chords. So, in a lot of pieces, it's kind of left up to us, right? A broken chord sounds beautiful on the harp, right? Let's try and have it with the proper levers. Right? Such a wonderful harp sound. So we certainly don't want to just never break unless there's a broken chord marked. But in a lot of pieces, it's just kind of left up to our aesthetic of what we like, and we can experiment with it. So again, in this case, and here you can, I'm the one who did this fantasy, and I didn't put any broken chords in because I'm leaving it up to you. So in the variation 4, these chords here, probably flat or just a little crack because it's up tempo, right? I guess I did put one broken chord indication in. In bar 89, I do specifically want that one to be broken, a nice wide break. So, interesting. Well, anyway, I give you full permission to break or not break any of these chords, except, that one in 89, I think, is nice broken. So, anyway, when we get here, maybe we want to break all of these. We could not break them at all. Or, again, maybe gradually get a slower and slower break as we go through. Anyway, experiment with it. Have fun. And I'll be back hopefully next week to wrap things up, looking at the tremolo section and the coda. So hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you next week. Cheers.